Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we're going to be discussing Scouts Overclocks. The long-awaited video for some people, because people have reminded me that I never did a Scout discussion video on their Overclocks. So starting out with the GK2, the GK2 in general, I think could use a little bit of an update, a little bit of a buff to it. Maybe not as extreme as some people say, where it's like, give it like double its damage, double its ammo, double its mag size, stuff like that. That seems a bit too much. I think the GK2 is in a decent spot right now. It's a fine assault rifle. It's a fine weapon overall for doing most difficulties. It hits a nice amount of damage, and it's got decent ammo. I would like a little bit larger magazine, maybe a little bit extra ammo. And I think, like, if you do that, the GK2 is perfectly fine where it is. I would also like to see some of its mods changed around, because some of these are not super impactful, like one more point of damage. That can help with like homebrew, but other than that, I guess it can kind of help with Bullets of Mercy too. It's just some of these don't feel like they do a whole lot a lot of the time, or you have something like this in tier 4 where you have like 4 really good choices and it's hard to pick between them. Because like rate of fire is great on an assault rifle, armor breaking is amazing on the assault rifle, but usually I go with weak spot damage because I want extra damage when I'm hitting something in the weak spot. So it's like, I kind of wish these were shifted around if just one of them was moved up, or some of these moved around. For the most part, I can't really complain about the base GK2. I think it's fine. Moving on to the GK2's Overclocks, some of these I wish would kind of be changed, and mostly just because I want them to be more fun. Not necessarily because I think that they're bad or anything. For clean ones, all of these are okay. The compact rounds, pretty nice. Gas rerouting, not a lot to talk about, but extra rate of fire is great. Extra reload speed is awesome. Homebrew powder is not my favorite, but if you build it full damage, you can potentially high roll and get a little bit more value out of it, which is kind of cool. So there's not really much to talk about there. Cleans are generally kind of bland anyway, at least most of the time. Maybe some of these could be tweaked a little bit just in terms of numbers. I would like to see like a little bit larger mag size from like compact ammo or something. For the balanced overclocks, I think these are actually 2 of the best ones for the GK2. Overclocked firing mechanism is great. It's probably my favorite overclock because I like having the assault rifle go burr. I think that's pretty cool. And I don't think this one needs to be changed. I think this one's actually pretty good. Bullets of Mercy is probably one of the best ones for the GK2 because it's extremely unlikely that you're not going to have some sort of status effect going at some point, especially in teams. And especially with all of the new changes to weapons and to like robots showing up, it's very uncommon for somebody to not be running like fire or ice or just being able to stun enemies in general. It doesn't work on corrosion, which I'm not sure why. I don't see why that couldn't be added to this. And its downsides of having a lower magazine size is very minimal. However, for this one being like one of the best ones, it is also kind of bland. It's just a slightly better GK2. Or, well, maybe not slightly, a bit better GK2. For unstable ones, I think these are okay too. AI stability engine is great, so long as you build it for rate of fire and for damage. Because if you don't, it's pretty weak then. Still good though, still pretty decent. And then electrifying reload can get you a lot of value, but it's just not my cup of tea. I just don't really like it that much. It did get changed recently too, so you do get a decent amount of damage over time, a decent amount of damage per second. Electric status effect is just really nice to have, but losing out on ammo, losing out on mag size kind of sucks. I think it's a fair trade for this one though. If you can trigger electricity across multiple things, it's pretty decent then. I think this is a whole lot better in solo than it is in multiplayer, because a lot of the time teammates are just going to kill whatever the heck you're shooting as you're just trying to fire 1 or 2 shots into each thing and then reload. And honestly, whenever I use it, it just feels kind of like a handicap to me because I just don't use it that well. Overclocks I think are fine. I just wish that some of them would get changed, or maybe just have an overhaul of overclocks to where we have some more fun ones. A lot of the GK2s just feel kind of basic, but I think that they're mostly okay. Moving on to the M1000 Classic. The M1000 as itself is really good. It's a fantastic weapon. It hits a really nice 55 damage, which makes it so at any difficulty you can one-shot, headshot normal grunts. And with the focus shot, it goes up to 110, so if you take armor breaking with it, you can one-shot, body shot the grunts too with that, which is very, very useful. It does well against big enemies, it does well against small enemies. It has blow-through rounds, which is fantastic. I kind of wish the GK2 had something like blow-through rounds on it. That would be awesome too. There's not a whole lot to complain about with the M1000. You can build it for single target damage and take it on like Dreadnought missions and do a lot with it. You can also build it for crowd control and have a decent crowd weapon. Most of these I think are honestly pretty fine. With balanced, or with the clean overclocks, hoverclock, super fun to use, not entirely necessary, but again, fun. I like fun overclocks more than anything. Minimal clips is great. It's arguably one of the best overclocks for the M1000, and just an overall really good quality of life overclock. I think it does everything that you kind of want it to do for the M1000. It used to be better because it used to also give you spare ammo, and I kind of wish that would be brought back. That was awesome when minimal clips gave you spare ammo. For balanced overclocks, it has two of the best ones in my opinion. Active stability system comes with basically no downside. It's just faster focus speed and no movement penalty when using the focus shots. This is another one that I use when I want to take focus shots. The reload time added doesn't really matter because you can reload cancel the M1000, and reload speed doesn't matter that much for it. So that's just a nice quality of life overclock. Nothing to complain about there. I think it's fun and it's good. And then Hipster is arguably one of the best overclocks in the entire game. Gives you tons of rate of fire, tons of bullets. It does drop your damage, but it doesn't matter. You can still even build this for focus shots and still one-shot body shot regular grunts because you hit exactly 108 damage, which is weird, but you can do it. And you can build this as spam fire. You can build it as single target damage. Well, I guess it's just automatically built for single target damage. It's great for crowds. It's just like so good, and it kind of is a bit overtuned. Yeah, I really think Hipster might need to get hit with something. I'm not sure what, because I wouldn't want any of these things going away. I mean, maybe if it just had like slightly more damage taken, like just slightly, like one more point of damage to where you couldn't do like focus shots. That it'd still be really good, and the spam fire build would still be amazing. But it's just like, it wouldn't be quite as flexible. Let's move on to the unstable ones. Electric focus shot and super cooling chamber. These two are pretty bad, honestly. Electric focus shot is okay. You can do a decent amount of electricity damage per second with it, but with it only working on focus shots and it nerfing your focus shot damage multiplier, it's so awkward to get to use. Most of the time you're just using it with like blow through rounds to hit multiple grunts and then just wait for them to die. But if you just took something like active stability system or minimal clips and did the same thing, you would just kill all the grunts that you hit anyway. So there's not really a point to it. And even to put electricity on big targets, you can do that better with like the Drac. And really the only thing that you're synergizing this with would be like electric electric Zukovs. Just your submachine guns to get extra damage out of it, which you could also do with your IFG. So this one is just in an awkward spot and should really be like overhauled, reworked, something. Super cooling chamber is just not ammo efficient. It cuts down your magazine it cuts down your overall ammo by way too much. You lose out on movement speed, you lose out on focus speed. You do get a lot more damage on your focus shots, but it's only on your focus shots, which like your focus shots were already great for just taking out regular enemies. They're only really going to be good for hitting big enemies now because you're not going to want to use them against regular small enemies. You're just going to overkill them that way, and you have less shots overall, so you just can't do it as often as you otherwise would. So this is only really useful on like Dreadnought missions, and that's about it. On every other mission type, it's just you're not going to be using your M1000 the majority of the time just because you don't have the ammo to use it. Drac is in a really good spot in my opinion. Did get nerfed, at least from Season 1 to Season 2, which I think is okay. It lost out on rate of fire and lost out on ammo, I believe, because some of its mods got changed around. That's fine. I think they're trying to put it more in line with the GK2, or it'd probably be better if they buffed the GK2 rather than nerf the Drac though, because the Drac right now I think is in a fantastic spot where it is. You can manage your ammo pretty well. It's got decent damage per second. It's got really good crowd control. It's really good against small enemies. Not as strong against big enemies as the other two weapons, at least without the mods and the overclocks and stuff. And it's got a great choice of mods. Pretty much it's got solid options all throughout, just about every tier I would say, that all work in their own way. Some of these, like the tier 5s, I wish there was another tier 5 here. For overclocks, we got 7 of them, which is awesome, and all of these are actually pretty good. I don't really have much to complain about with the Drac. I honestly don't have really anything to complain about the Drac. The 2 clean ones, like thermal liquid coolant, is great. It's essentially half of your tier 1 cooldown and half of your tier 3 cooldown, and you can stack it on top of that and just have essentially an assault rifle that you can just keep firing without having to worry about it overheating anytime soon. So great, everything that you'd want out of a clean overclock. Aggressive venting, super fun, one of the funnest overclocks. Gets you a lot of damage per second, gets you basically no downside. This used to be a balance, now it's a clean, and it's even better as a clean because now it doesn't have any downside. Your upside is just you have a shorter overheat duration, and even if you just play the Drac normally, like you don't even intend on overheating it, this is still going to be an advantage because if you do overheat it, you get bonuses out of it. And this one, if you do build it to overheat, does a lot of damage per second. Plus it has the fear on it. It's great just to build it like full rate of fire, go with hot feet, go with the manual heat dump, and just trying to get it to where you can just keep manually heat dumping this. You won't run out of ammo quickly with it. I think it's a fantastic overclock, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. Balanced overclock's kind of the same way. We have Rewire mod, which can be really good It depends on the mission type. On like escort missions, I find it to be pretty bad, and it's not one of my favorite overclocks to use overall. Essentially, it's, do you want like triple your ammo? Because you can have triple your ammo now, or I think it's actually more than that. Every time you overheat your gun, and for this, just whenever you're firing, just hold down the trigger. Doesn't matter if there's anything that you're shooting, just hold down the trigger until it runs out, and that's it. Wait for it to overheat, get your ammo back, do the same thing over and over again. Works really well against crowds. You can constantly be moving out of the way with this. Just build it like full rate of fire, have hot feed on it. You can run like manual heat dump if you want, or thermal feedback loop. Both are really good with it. Impact deflection got kind of nerfed because it was a clean. It didn't have any downside. Now it's a balance, but it's still a great overclock. This one lowers your rate of fire, but you still have a pretty high rate of fire at 10, so it's not that big of a deal. Plus, it lets you have bouncy rounds, so you can potentially hit twice with every round, and you take something like Plasma Splash. It's amazing for clearing up swarmers. It's your best option for clearing up swarmers. I don't think there's anything to complain about with this one. If there was, it was that it was too good, and then it got switched with aggressive venting, and now they're both really strong. Overtuned Particle Accelerator, another great overclock. Gives you massive amounts of damage, although your accuracy goes way down, and you can't overheat the gun quickly, but use this at close to medium range and you'll just shred through everything. I think it's a fair trade-off, and I think it's just all around really solid. You can also build it however you want. It works well against crowds, it works well against big enemies. The only thing that it doesn't work well against is anything at long range. Shield Battery Booster is another one that I think is fine, but it's not for me. It's so hard to manage this, especially on the higher difficulties where you're just constantly taking chip damage. It's so easy to just hurt yourself inadvertently, and not even that much. This one gives you more damage, more kind of everything, so long as you have a full shield. Shield Disruption just completely kills this one, and it's a flat nerf. Don't take it on those missions. And then things like Hollow Bow, you can take so much passive damage from. Even things like Swarmers, you can take passive damage. Falling, you can take passive damage. You can take passive damage from allies. It's just, there's so much that you can just take a slight amount of damage and crack your shield, and then get basically no bonus from this, or very little bonus from this. As well as when you do overheat it, it breaks your shields, which can be an issue if it happens at an inopportune time. So again, it's just like, it has a lot of potential in it, but it's not for me. I've heard people say to rework it to where it gradually goes down with your shield, which might work, but I feel like it has to be a pretty big jump from like just at 100% shield to any less than that, and maybe just give you a slight bonus then. Because if it's just incremental, I think it's going to be way too strong, because you're almost always going to have some level of shield, so it's practically always going to be a bonus. Then we've got Thermal Exhaust Feedback. This one's great. I don't really have any complaints about this one. I think it's a fair trade-off. More heat per shot, longer overheat duration, but you get fire on your shots once you heat up your gun so much. It's great. Fire's really good, especially against the robots. That might change with Season 3. We don't know. But right now, it's really good, and I think it's probably going to stay quite good too, because it is just essentially a bonus if you can manage the heat. All right, moving on to secondaries. We've got plenty to talk about with the secondaries. So first up with the Jury-Rigged Boomstick. Not too much to complain about with the Jury-Rigged Boomstick, at least in my opinion. I like the Jury-Rigged Boomstick quite a bit. There are a couple things that should probably get changed with it. One is like, make it so the reload speed in this tier is faster than the reload speed taking just a higher rate of fire. I don't know why rate of fire is tied to reload speed. That's kind of dumb. This should be quicker, and I still usually take this one because a lot of the time I'm not firing this out quickly and then reloading it and firing it out again. Most of the time I'm just pulling this out to shoot something quickly and then put it away and go back to my primary weapon or go to the grappling hook. So I still usually take the faster reload, especially if I'm not taking like Born Ready. Buff like the improved blast wave. There's no point in having an extra 20 damage on your blast wave. Your shotgun already clears up swarmers without it, so this doesn't really help. There's not really too much to say. You can build it for ammo, you can build it for damage, you can build it for a mix. Main thing that I want to talk about with the Boomstick though is overclocks, because it has some very odd overclocks. For some reason it has 4 clean ones, 1 balanced, 1 unstable. I think this should be changed. Compact shells, this one's great. Extra ammo, faster reload speed, it's a nice quality of life overclock, everything you want in a clean, I think it's perfectly fine. Stuffed shells is the same way. This one's actually really good. Extra damage, extra pellets, nothing but a bonus to damage. There's no downside to it. So if you can't decide if you want more damage, or maybe you feel like jumbo shells might be eating too much ammo, stuffed shells is a great alternative to that. Double barrel just needs to be reworked in general. It's honestly probably the weakest overclock in the game at the moment, or at least the least optimal overclock, maybe not the weakest, because it does give you 1 more pellet, or 1 more damage per pellet, which is nice. but every time you fire it, you're forced to fire out both barrels, which is fine if you're just fighting big enemies. If you're fighting Praetorians, if you're fighting Oppressors, if you're fighting Dreadnoughts, firing out both barrels doesn't really matter all that much. However, most of the time you're not only using it for that. You're using it for like grunt clear, and a lot of the time you only need one shot from your shotgun to clear up grunts. You don't need to fire out both barrels every time. So this one I feel like should just, I would just say rework this one, make it unstable, make it something that's super fun. Keep it where it fires out both barrels but does something else, like maybe has major knockback on it or something. Something where it's not just a clean overclock that does basically nothing except for make you have a less efficient weapon overall. Special powder, super fun. I wouldn't change this at all. It just lets you jump around and have fun with it. That's about it. Shape shells I think is fine too. It did get reworked recently to where it no longer reduces damage, or no longer reduces pellet count. It used to reduce pellet count, which reduced your damage. Now it reduces ammo, but by 4 ammo, who cares? 50% spread reduction is pretty nice for the boomstick. Makes it so you can't hit things from pretty far away pretty accurately. I like taking this on like MacTerra mission. I don't really have a problem with shape shells. I think it's a fine balanced overclock. And then jumbo shells, I again don't really have a problem with. I think the trade-offs are fine. Reload speed and ammo for massive amounts of damage. Cool. I like using it at very close range to just destroy basically anything. Overall, probably just like rework double barrel and change some of these other ones around. Give us either some more balanced or some more unstable, or move some of these to balanced and unstable. It's fine with it having 6. I wouldn't be opposed to getting like a 7th or an 8th overclock though. And then we've got the Zukovs. Zukovs for mods kind of have some odd ones. Most of them are fine, I would say, because ammo or damage is kind of whatever. Overclocks, again, really weird. I don't know why the Zukovs have this. Well, I kind of do, because one of the overclocks was taken out, and I think it used to have 2 clean, 1 balanced, and 3 unstable, which I think is perfectly fine. But it feels like it's missing an overclock here. Like you could put another overclock or 2 and give it another balanced or give it another clean overclock. Up first, minimal clips, faster rate of fire, faster reloads. The reload speed is actually pretty cool. If you stack full reload speed, you go from 1.8 seconds to just 0.8 seconds of a reload, so it's super quick. I do like that, but it's a clean overclock. Not really much to say there. Custom casings, I think is fine. It's not super exciting. It's just you get larger mag size for less rate of fire. Neither one of those is necessary with the Zukovs. They're fine with the magazine. They're fine with their base rate of fire. Cryo minelets, I think is really good, especially since you do have blow-through rounds with the Zukovs. It can be really good for crowd control. The downsides to it are not that big a deal, like losing out on damage, losing out on mag size doesn't really matter. Just the utility of freezing crowds of stuff is really good. It's not great against freezing really big things like oppressors or dreadnoughts and stuff. It's great for freezing stationary targets though, so you can freeze like the Nexuses, or you can freeze the Spitballers. Those are pretty great options. So overall, I wouldn't really change cryo minelets. I think it's fine where it's at. Embedded detonators is really good. Embedded detonators is probably the best Zukov overclock, and I wouldn't really change it because I don't really think base embedded detonators is like overpowered or anything. It's mostly that you can just stack ammo on this so efficiently and get a lot of damage out of it. Because, okay, losing out on damage doesn't matter. Your explosives are going to be doing your damage now, so this could drop you just to 1 damage for all I care. Mag size, again, doesn't matter. You have 30 rounds. That's still more than enough. And then the big hit for this is just losing out on that massive 400 bullets. But if you take extra ammo in Tier 1 and Tier 4, you go back up to 450, which is more than enough to be dealing high damage to stuff. You can clear up crowds really quick. You can clear up crowds fairly quick with this even. It's really good against single targets, really good against oppressors, Praetorians, really anything you want to kill with it. Embedded detonators will kill it very fast. So yeah, just stacking ammo on it makes it really strong. I feel like when I first did this series, I talked about this kind of with magic bullets, where magic bullets by itself, I honestly don't think is overpowered. I think magic bullets is perfectly fine and like a fairly balanced overclock across the board, even though it's an unstable. I feel like embedded detonators is the same. It's mostly just the mods that it has that make it really good, because you can just stack more ammo with it, and that's really all it needs. It doesn't need anything else. Damage is completely useless with it. And then our last overclock is gas recycle. More damage. This one actually did get buffed. It was 5 damage, now it's 6 damage, which is pretty nice. It increases your base spread by 50%. That's kind of rough, and it lowers your movement speed by 50%. It also takes away your weak spot damage, although this is only weak spot damage on the gun, since the gun has an additional 15% on it. This takes it down to 0, I believe. I don't think it really affects the, it doesn't affect any of the modifiers. So if you're still hitting something in the head, you're still doing double damage, or if you're hitting like a bulk in its weak spots, you're still doing triple damage. That isn't affected by this, just the extra weak spot damages, so don't take hollow point rounds in tier 4 because that's a dead skill. Other than that, I actually really like this one. You can build it for damage and have 20 damage, but usually I don't. Usually I just build it for more utility and it works just fine. And then we have the new weapon to talk about, which is the Bolt Shark. And the Bolt Shark is really fun. I really like the crossbow. It tends to be that people either go one way or the other with the crossbow. Either they really like it or they really hate it. And I kind of understand both. It's a super fun weapon to use, at least in my opinion, and it can be fairly rewarding to use too, but it is difficult to use. But I think that's more personal preference than anything. For mods, I think the Bolt Shark has some pretty great choices in mods. Some of them don't really come into play when it comes to overclocks, like some of them get really redundant with certain overclocks, especially like this one, the radio transmitter module, where you can call back your bolts, but then any of the special bolts, or not necessarily any of the special bolts, but certain special bolts like the taser bolts, and if you have cryo bolts, fire bolts, or trifork volley, you can't recall them, so this one's just a dead skill on any of those, which is a little bit unfortunate. I kind of wish there was another option here than just the speed. Speed is great, but another option here would be kind of interesting. Aside from that, the tier 1s are awesome. The special bolts are great. All of them are pretty good. For overclocks, it has a nice spread of overclocks, 2, 2, and 2. And then for clean overclocks, quick fire is pretty good. I like this one quite a bit. It's great if you want to take this for like sniping. I like taking it with the Drac, and then just using the Drac for close to medium range, using this at longer ranges, especially if I'm using like Overtune Particle Accelerator. I find it pretty good with that one. Specialist is great too. It used to be stronger. Well, it was mostly because some of the bolts got nerfed. That's why it used to be stronger, but extra special bolts is great. All the special bolts are really nice to have with the crossbow, so this one's a nice quality of life overclock. Just lets you have more utility, which I'm all for. Most of the balanced ones with the cryo and the fire bolts are good. They're good in their own ways because these don't build up heat or frost very quickly. However, they have a lingering effect on them. Cryo bolts are great for dealing with crowds of regular bugs. Fire bolts are arguably a little bit better because you can keep fire on an enemy longer and help build it up quicker with the team. So it can be better for like keeping fire on Nemesis or building up fire on turrets. Again, with like in combination with something else. So if you're like thermal exhaust feedback on your Drac or something like that. Or if somebody else has like a flamethrower, you take either one of these, you take pheromone bolts, you fire a pheromone bolt, you fire this on top of whatever you hit. Everything crowds around it, either lights on fire and freezes. Fantastic. Then we move on to the unstable ones where we have bodkin points, one of my new favorite overclocks. Super fun to use. You do need the damage for this one, but it can one-shot grunts, which is pretty useful, and it can potentially bounce into 2 other grunts. So you can potentially clear up 3 grunts with one shot. It does let you have some crowd control there. It's a very fun overclock to use. The downsides are not too bad because you can make up for them. I wouldn't change this one at all. I think it's perfectly fine where it is. I don't think it's overpowered at all. I don't think that it's like a super strong go-to one. It's one of my go-to ones, but that's just because I find it super fun. And then we have Trifork Volley, which Trifork Volley is great too. It's similar to something like Embedded Detonators, Jumbo Shells. Those two usually outcompete it just because you get more shots overall with them, but you'll still do massive damage with this. And if you take it with like Taser Bolts and the Magnetic Shafts, you're pretty good to go. This lets you fire out 3 bolts at once. You can't retrieve those bolts. You get less damage per bolt, but you get more damage overall because you're shooting out 3 bolts at once. I don't think there's anything to change here about the crossbow in general. I think the crossbow is actually fine. Maybe there is stuff to change with the crossbow, but it almost always has to do with just like fixing the crossbow because the crossbow kind of breaks the game sometimes. And there's been like exploits with it for the longest time. There's been weird encounters that we've had with it for the longest time too. Like there was the way to just get infinite electric bolts or infinite special bolts in general. And you could have like everlasting electric bolts at one point, which was kind of crazy. So you could just set up this giant like taser wall and nothing could come and get you because anything just runs right through it and just dies instantly because you just have so much electricity passing through it. There's also been a glitch that I've had where this was on an Elite deep dive where my crossbow just broke and it wouldn't allow me to reload it. So every time I shot it, I have to switch out to a different weapon and then switch back to it, which was more difficult because if I wanted to switch between the special bolts, I would have to switch my weapon out, switch back to the crossbow, change the bolt, fire the bolt, switch back again so that I could once again replace it with the standard bolts. And it felt like I was using a crossbow with just one arm. It was very difficult. It only lasted for one stage. Like my crossbow worked normal on stage 1, broke on stage 2, and then worked normal on stage 3. Have no clue what caused it. We might do this again with the other classes because I haven't talked about the secondary weapons, and some things have been changed with each of the classes, I believe. So if you guys would like to see that, please feel free to ask me down in the comments below. I'd be more than willing to go through them. Thanks everybody for watching this. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for that, and special thanks to the supporters of this channel. I really do appreciate all the support. If you'd like to become a supporter, there are links down in the description. And if you would like to see any more of my Deep Rock discussion videos, there should be a playlist right over here. Be sure to click on that. Thanks everybody for watching this. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye!